What is California Proposition 21 and how does it expand rent control in California? We're going to let you know in this video. Hey there, Christian Walsh, Coldwell Banker Wire Associates. We are real estate brokers based in Southern California who are here to help tenants and landlords, buyers and sellers throughout the state and beyond. And we're here with an update on an important ballot proposition coming up on November 3rd. I don't know if you heard there's an election coming, but it's a pretty big one this year. So we're here to talk more about Proposition 21, which specifically allows rent control to be expanded in the state of California if it's enacted. So in this update, we're going to run through a bunch of important things. We're going to tell you what Prop 21 says. We're going to tell you about rent control as it stands in the state of California. We're going to tell you what a yes vote and a no vote means, and we're going to run through some pros and cons of Proposition 21 in California. So go ahead and hit that like button if you're ready to get started. So the first thing you may be thinking when you read Proposition 21 is you may think, this sounds very familiar. I remember another bill that may have been just like this 2 years ago, and in fact, you'd be right. In 2018, we had Proposition 10. In fact, some folks have called this Proposition 10 2.0. For all intents and purposes, the bills are almost identical. And how did that last bill fare? Well, 59% of voters in the state of California said no, and it was shot down. But here we are again, we're going through it again with a very similar bill, and it was brought back to the ballot because they got enough signatures. So let's go through right now what this bill says and what it means for rent control in California. I've included a link below to a few different resources, including the full text of the bill, and I think it's very important to read that. And you'll see there's a lot of language and redactions, and it redacts from another bill, the Costa Hawkins Act, which we're going to touch on briefly, make some big changes to that act. But let's talk about Prop 21 and what it says. So what it's going to allow is local government, so that's local municipalities or cities, will have much more control over setting rental rates, regulating the amount of rent charged, regulating rent increases, regulating tenancies. They'll have a lot more control over those various things within their own local municipality. The bill allows vacancy control, and what this says is that when a tenant moves out or is evicted, that the bill is going to determine exactly how much the new rent can be. Right now, a landlord is allowed to bring it to market, but under Prop 21, the landlord would not be able to have the rent be any higher than 15% of what they charge before the tenant moves out, and they have to keep it that rate within 3 years. So after year 3, they can go above 15%, but it can't be any higher than 15% of what was charged to the previous tenant. The other big thing that the bill is going to do is dramatically reduce exempt properties. And I'm going to cover rent control as it is now, but we actually do have rent control in California, and there are exempt properties, but this bill is going to dramatically reduce the properties that are exempt from rent control. It'll basically say that anything 15 years or newer is exempt, and if a landlord owns 2 or fewer single-family homes or condos, 2 or fewer units, 1 duplex, they're exempt. But the moment they go beyond 2 units or buy a triplex or a duplex plus a condo or 3 houses or 3 condos, they are immediately subject to Proposition 21. So doesn't California already have rent control? The answer is yes. Big cities like Los Angeles and San Francisco and a few other areas have had rent control in place for a long, long time. Then in 2019, and actually the start of 2020, the Tenant Protection Act of 2019, also known as AB 1482, went into place and brought rent control across the entire state. And with AB 1482, if you've seen any of my other videos, I have a whole playlist related to AB 1482. It put in just cause provisions for removing tenants, evictions, etc. And it also put in place rent caps. So it basically says that rent in the state of California is capped at 5% plus CPI, Consumer Price Index, and can go no higher than 10% for properties under AB 1482. It has exemptions for condos, single-family homes, and buildings that are 15 years or newer. A wider bunch of properties that are exempt as compared to Proposition 21. So those are in place. We already have those rent control measures in place. AB 3088, which I've discussed, expanded some of the just cause eviction provisions and actually took away the exemptions that are in AB 1482. So short answer is yes, we currently have rent control in place in the state of California. And when the bill, Prop 10, was defeated with 59% of the vote in 2018, we didn't have statewide rent control. So in this case, we actually already have rent control in place. So Prop 21 is going to change the landscape significantly for the current rent control bill that we have in place, AB 1482. At the base of it, what Prop 21 is going to roll back is Costa Hawkins. The Costa Hawkins Rental Housing Act became law in 1995. It was created by a Democratic senator and a Republican assemblyman. Hard to believe that people were working together from both sides of the aisle at any point in time. But yes, it did happen in 1995. And what it prevented cities from being able to enact their own rent control, and it prevented vacancy control. It basically allows a landlord to bring market rent to the market when a tenant moves out or is evicted. So this was put into place in 1995. So the cities that had rent control before Costa Hawkins, so specifically Los Angeles, San Francisco, some of the other cities I mentioned, they were able to keep what they had. Local municipalities were not able to put in rent control measures like vacancy control and rent caps. AB 1482 changed that, but is still within the guidelines, did not roll back Costa Hawkins. What Prop 21 seeks to do is essentially completely eliminate Costa Hawkins and let every municipality create their own patchwork of rent caps and vacancy control measures. Back in front of our trusty whiteboard, I figured it would be helpful to actually run through and show what rents would look like. We've got pre-AB 1482, we've got AB 1482, and what rents would look like under Prop 21. So we'll run through some numbers. This will help you better understand how rent control currently works in California and what rent control would look like under Prop 21. So this is a triplex, so 3 units. I sold this a few years ago in the city of Costa Mesa. So this is not exempt from AB 1482 and would not be exempt from Prop 21. So for the sake of argument, let's say it's a nice 2-bedroom unit. The building was built in the 1960s, so it's not excluded due to being built 15 years or sooner, but it was redone. It was very nice. But let's say there was a long-term tenant that had been in a unit and was only paying $1,500. They decided it was time to move out, gave their notice and moved out. So let's run through what the rents would look like based on a tenant having paid $1,500, what it looks like related to AB 1482, Prop 21, and if there's no rent control. So at $1,500, 2017 and before rent control at all, before AB 1482, landlord could set it to market rent. So let's just, for the sake of numbers, make the market rent $2,000. AB 1482 allows the same thing. The landlord can set it to market rent. So the landlord is going to get a new tenant in there. That tenant is in under a lease and they're paying $2,000 a month. Prop 21 is going to change things when it comes to the rent that an owner can charge after a tenant moves out. So it is capped at 15% within the first 3 years. So, and that's based off of the previous rent that was paid. So let's say this property manager, because they know their rent was low, has decided that they're going to go with the max 15% right off the bat. So that'll be $1,725. So if Prop 21 goes into effect, it'll be $1,725 will be the max rent for year 1 that could be charged. Again, these are the market rents here. So things get interesting. Year 2. With no rent control in California, you could raise rent any dollar amount you wanted. It could be 10, 20, 30%, as long as you weren't doing it in a retaliatory fashion as a landlord. So let's say 10%. So that means year 2, the rent for that particular unit is $2,200. Under AB 1482, this would be capped. So as it stands right now, it's going to be capped at 5% plus CPI, which is right now in the pandemic running about 0.7%. So that's an increase of 5.7%. So if the landlord decides to do that, it's going to be $21.14. Under Prop 21, year 2, they've already done their 15% increase. Rent stays $17.25. Year 3, things get interesting. So we're still before, so this is 2017, 2018, 2019. We're still before 2020. Did that on purpose. So year 3, another 10% increase, which they can do. That takes us to 24.20. AB 1482, 5% plus CPI. We'll say CPI is still low. Keep it at the 0.7%. So you're at 22.34. And Prop 21, you know the answer, 17.25. So this lays it all out so you can see what happens. So this is no rent control under AB 1482, no caps. The rent just keeps going up and up and up. Here, as things are, we have rents capped, still goes up. We were at market and it's gone up a little bit. So rents go up, but not as dramatically. Under Prop 21, rent has not gone up any bit whatsoever. So the landlord, while their costs may be going up, the landlord is stuck at that rent. So just wanted to run through and show you some numbers, what would happen under Proposition 21, where we are now, and where we were. And then remember, this is where we were when Prop 10, which is the same as Prop 21, was shut down in California. We were here. Now we're here in a happy medium. Let's run through what a yes means and a no means, because you know on some of these bills you can't quite tell whether a yes is actually a yes or no is a no. So let's run through that. Voting yes in favor of Prop 21 means that more cities and counties and local municipalities will be able to put different types and more types of rent control in place on more properties than they currently are able to right now, and will be able to set the rent after a tenant moves out or is evicted. So that is a yes. Voting a no would mean that you're saying that you're going to keep the current level of rent control, keep AB 1482, keep the exemptions that AB 1482 has, and not expand rent control beyond what it currently is in the state of California. And the pros and cons of Proposition 21. So these are literally pulled from the state ballot, the groups that are in support or against. These are the items that they stated. These are not ones that I'm making up. So these are the pros and cons of Proposition 21. So those who are in favor, those who say yes, say that it will keep families in their home and decrease homelessness. So those are the two reasons. That's basically, those are the pros. I'm not going to evaluate whether that's actually the case, but those are the pros for Proposition 21. Now the cons for Proposition 21, it's actually a much longer list. And again, this is the list that those who are against it came up with. Here's what the cons are according to those who are against it, which includes folks like the governor of California who's against it. So it's going to undermine the nation's strongest rent control measures right now, AB 1482. It's going to cost jobs, reduce home values. It's going to stop new housing from being built. It's going to eliminate homeowner protections, and it's not going to do anything specifically for renters, seniors, veterans, or the disabled. So that's a long list of cons that this bill has. I know we covered a lot of ground on this, and I hope this helped. We've got links below so you can go to these same resources that I reviewed. Hopefully this helps you make a decision. So this was defeated 2 years ago before we had rent control. We'll see what the outcome is this time, but the state already has dramatic rent control in place. Do we need to let Proposition 21 roll all that back and let local municipalities decide how much rent should be for landlords and tenants? You make that decision on November 3rd. Make sure you get out there and vote. We appreciate you tuning in. We have links below to subscribe to our email newsletter. We're going to keep this great content coming, and we're going to do some more on some additional bills, as well as other topics relevant to landlords and tenants, buyers and sellers in the state of California and beyond. Thanks for tuning in. This has been Christian Walsh, Weyer Associates.